Jim Leeves is the co-founder and head of numbers at Shapes. As well as digital accounting services, Shapes offers digital marketing services to boost brand impact, generate new leads, and drive business growth. Shapes can offer insights not just from a profit perspective, but also making changes to brand awareness and marketing campaigns to drive results to businesses without an internal design or marketing team. In this episode, we'll discuss how accounting and marketing come together in the work that Jim does, what design thinking is and how you can use it in your business, the different software that Jim and his team find useful, and how Jim sees the future of advisory services.
You're listening to Beyond Insights, your go-to podcast for all things accounting, business, and technology.
From cybersecurity and AI innovations to sustainability and work-life balance, we've got you covered.
We host insightful guests from different backgrounds, industries, and locations all around the world.
From this diversity of thought, we aim to find solutions to some of our most pressing business problems.
Thank you for tuning in. Let's dive right in and go beyond insights. So Jim, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, thanks Alex. Thanks for having us on.
Maybe you can tell me a bit about yourself and your background. How did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, cool. So my name's Jim. I am an accountant who's based in the UK. We're in the southeast corner, just outside of Canterbury. And I did kind of a maths degree, and then I did kind of just my standard chartered training in a quite a traditional firm. And then had the opportunity to go and work as a consultant with Xero. So I had the privilege and the pleasure of speaking and working with lots and lots of accountancy practices all up and down the UK. Some of those were really small and sort of one-man bands, and all the way up to sort of some of those top 10 firms that everyone's probably familiar with their names. And then about 18 months ago, I had the opportunity and again, privilege to start my own firm. So we're called Shapes, and we, as we'll get onto probably, we combine not only digital accounting services, but digital marketing services for small businesses.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's a really unusual combination of services to see.
Yeah, we're one of a handful of firms that do this, I think. We've come across one other similar, but very, very rare to, I guess, combine those two services. You see accountants very often will team up with financial advisors or pensions advisors or legal firms as well, more recently. But to combine the disciplines of accounting and marketing together is quite an unusual setup.
And what kind of prompted you to combine these two disciplines?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And part of it comes from, I guess, a personal love of all things brand and things that are done well from a brand perspective. One of the reasons I was probably drawn to Xero in the first place, not that we're here to sell Xero or talk about Xero necessarily, but I love things when brands are done well. And what I had seen were two things, I suppose, like working with different firms across the UK, were that the firms that had a strong brand identity, strong purpose, and real clarity as to who they serviced were the firms that were generally doing really well. The firms that were a little bit more vague about their service offering, or just that traditional kind of practice route because you trained as an accountant, then you deliver accounting and tax services, were the ones that I felt didn't have quite as much momentum, and in particular probably the love from their clients that the newer, more innovative, slightly different types of firms brought. And another thing to add to that, so when I was growing up, I was part of I played a lot of music and was involved in orchestras. And one of the beauties of an orchestra is, of course, you've got lots of different people play their instrument because that's the instrument they learn and know how to play and bring to the party. And in a really similar way, with a business, you've got people that can bring all sorts of different disciplines based on what they're experts in. And so that might be, if you're in a big tech firm, it might be design, or it might be the build of that tech, or it might be sales, or it might be marketing. And in fact, all of these disciplines are so unique and nuanced if you want to be really good at what you do. And so for me, that was a difference between what I'd seen in practice historically, which is accountants coming through, training, passing their exams, and then becoming business owners. And so from a diversity of experience and a diversity of thought process, you probably don't get as much in that. So Shapes kind of combines these two things that come from two different worlds together to hopefully bring a more rounded experience for the clients that we work with.
Yeah, I think that's really cool, and something like a different way I can kind of relate to, coming from more of an arts background and moving into accounting software. You really get to see how the different elements and different disciplines complement each other.
No, yeah, and I think that's part of the beauty of accounting in lots of ways is that you obviously there's a technical requirement to understand the rules and what needs to happen and what's a debit, what's a credit, what's a tax return, etc. But actually, to the way that you can help people is by creating connection and engagement with those people and understanding what their goals are and things. And so whether or not you have the technical capacity, that's another kind of soft skill that often isn't part of accounting training necessarily, to build those connections and really be able to help people along their journeys. So I love the idea that, yes, you can wear the hat of I've got a badge to say I've passed an exam, but your diversity of what you bring in terms of the thinking and the background, the experience, like I mentioned, to the business owners that you're working with, does offer like a different kind of flavour, I suppose, when you've got different people in the room that have got different backgrounds.
Yeah, for sure. And I think going back to the topic that we're talking about today is design thinking. I was wondering if you could maybe explain to people who haven't heard of design thinking before what it is and how it fits into Shapes' approach to helping small businesses.
Yeah, so hopefully I can explain what design thinking is in hopefully a quite succinct way, because like you said, lots of people probably heard the phrase but might not necessarily understand what it means. I actually think probably the best way to understand it is to go through a workshop with a facilitator that's got some service design background, which is how I learned a lot of my design thinking tools and knowledge and things. And the way I would break it down is really to kind of understand that throughout whatever process it is, you're really trying to understand all of the different options or all the different challenges that you're trying to tackle. And then with that knowledge, explore all the different ways that problem can be solved. And you're not just looking at kind of a quick decision because we think that's a good idea, therefore we're going to do it. You're slowing that whole process down and designing the methodology or the product or the team that you need to pull together. And it can be any of those things. It can be a really small thing around, how should it look when the people walk through the door and what's their first experience when they come into our building, all the way through to what's our website journeys look like or what's our onboarding journeys look like for our clients. What I love about it is that you're really interested in the experience of the people that are part of that process, whatever it is. And so it's not just a case of the boss has decided this is a good idea, therefore we're going to go with it. It's a case of really understanding if we did this or if we did that, then what is the right outcome? And if you're new to design thinking or want to explore service design, I can recommend a book called The Design Thinking Playbook, which I used. You can find it on Amazon or all good retailers probably. And yeah, it's got loads of tools in there. The other question that comes up a lot in design thinking, and again, people probably see this question a lot, but don't maybe tie it in with service design and design thinking, is the question of what if we. And so it's really starting with the exploration of a what if question to then get onto the solution. And maybe that solution isn't right to start with, but then you learn and continue that design thinking process throughout what it is you're looking at.
Awesome. And how do you see design thinking bridging the gap between accounting and marketing?
Yeah, I think like what I've seen and experienced so far from the marketing side is very much what you're looking to do from a marketing perspective when you're dealing with a business is that you're really interested in understanding personas of the people that you're trying to reach. So that's probably your customers most of the time. But who are those people? Where do they live? What are their problems? What are their pain points? And how can your solution solve for that? And so, like a good example of that for us, and a very personal example for me is, I don't particularly love Facebook, right? But for sure, we have got people that sit and live and breathe hopefully not, but are involved on Facebook every day, and they're potential customers. And so if we're to ignore that whole platform, potentially that's hundreds, thousands of people that we could be reaching that we've ignored because of my personal preference. And that's not necessarily the right approach. So it's coming up with away from personal preference so much to a thought out process. How do we combine that with accounting? So part of our name shapes is the idea and the thinking is that when you're running a business or an organization, you will have things that change all the time. And as those things change, it might be that you're adding a team member, or you're changing a process, or you've got a new product to bring to market. Whatever it is, that is a change to an extent of the shape of your business. And with any change, there are two aspects that need to be thought about. Obviously, the financially, are you set up, and is it the right decision to go in that direction? There's opportunities in all sorts of things that we do, where we spend our time, where we spend our money and our energy. But financially, from a numbers perspective, is that the right decision and way to go forward? And then if you are doing a change, then what's the story behind that change? And so there's a marketing tale to tell, or a story to tell, around why you're doing that thing differently, or what you can bring to that customer engagement, or why you've maybe changed the country that you're working in, whatever it is. There's a marketing story there, and so that needs to be told via social media, or via websites, or via newsletters, or whatever it is. So big things, typically you've got a numbers and a story tell to communicate somehow. And so that's where we come in, I suppose, to kind of do the planning and some of the delivery potentially for those two things.
That's a really cool story behind why you're called Shapes as well. Seeing how that story takes shape, or the numbers take shape.
There's a uniqueness as well, I think, to every business, to every team, to every individual that brings as well. So the idea that if I asked you, Alex, like, what's your favorite shape? You'll have something in mind, right? And it might be different next week, but you feel a certain affiliation to either a shape or a number, or whatever it is. And I love that with organizations, there is that kind of ever-changing aspect to what they look like. And so we even play around with the ideas of course, you've got circles and squares and triangles and things. But then what if that's like a slightly different shape, and it's you've added an extra side, or you've made it 3D rather than 2D. So the expansion of different forms and shapes is also something that we play around with based on the uniqueness of the clients that we work with.
Oh, really interesting. And how do you think that this kind of methodology can help small businesses?
Yeah, good question. I suppose there's one of the things that we found over the last 18 months, 2 years since we've been alive, is that it's very rare for someone to go looking for accounting services and marketing services in the same place at the same time. We're yet to find one that's come across us and gone, actually, we want both of your services right now. So we have, in a sense, we've got two routes to market, which is helpful for us. We've got a marketing route and an accounting route. But what we find is because we're a small team and we know all the clients that we're working with, we find opportunities to then say, well, that's great. You want to develop your website, or you want to do this campaign. How are you going to track how successful that campaign is? And often for small businesses, for sure, those questions haven't been thought about, or they have been thought about, but they haven't got the solution in-house to be able to deal with it. And the same on the accounting side. We can look at the numbers, and we can look at trends of sales and whatever else. But actually they may do, might be something that they want to do is actually completely change the way that they're positioned within the market. They might want to enter a new market. We've had a couple of clients recently that have gone to big exhibitions for the first time. And where you've been to these things before, you kind of know, well, you need a stand and you need a pillar thing and maybe a TV on the wall and some sweets to give away or whatever it is. But it was the first time they'd ever gone to one of these. And so we kind of helped them design the concept for the banner and the stand and all of that. And they're obviously going to then want to know, we went to that exhibition, what was the output from it? Was it successful for us? Do we do it next year or not? So this is where I guess the accounting and the marketing really come together in that sense. Because if we're looking at both, then we get the opportunity to do the output and then play with something else and then see it come to life again. And really help, pardon the pun, but we shape the direction of travel for that business in a almost in a tangible sense. And so to go back to your question of how does it apply, how does it work, one of the things I would always recommend to any business, and lots of them have them, but find a space where you can write things on a wall. The room I'm in now, there's a massive whiteboard over there that has had plans for businesses scrawled on the whiteboard before they come to life. In a literal sense, and that might be a brand, it might be a design of a team, it might be a design of a whole new future of that business. And so writing things on big walls where you can step back and go, oh, is that right? Have we covered everything? Is a really powerful thing. And so that's probably not the top tip. There is, I think you've got a question for me later around like the top tip from this website, but get a whiteboard somewhere and scribble on it with your clients.
Interesting, because there's also, I think, something to actually writing out with your hands as opposed to doing everything digitally, especially from a creative standpoint.
I think so. People say that, don't they? That there's it's tangibly different for memory. It helps you remember better if it's not digital, it's written. And there are some neat tools now where you can obviously you can scribble in your scribble, and then take a photo of it, and it can be turned into a digital thing really easily.
Yeah, very cool. I was wondering if maybe you could walk us through a specific example of how you applied design thinking to a client's challenge.
So there's two I can think of. The one I mentioned a couple of days back was a client that actually came to us in a slightly strange position, in that they had a business that had been running for a number of years. The directors had been putting their own money in to make it successful and work, and they'd built an incredible brand. But they were at a time in life where they were thinking of making quite a significant move. As we speak, they now live in Italy. They kind of made that transition of moving from the UK to Italy. And the big question was, do we carry on this business in the UK? Do we transition it to overseas, or do we do something completely different and maybe shut down? And so we were quite early on in our days when we kind of did a whole whiteboard session, and we used some a tool that I would again recommend to people that haven't come across this book yet, called The 6 Types of Working Genius by Patrick Lencioni. So we were trying to figure out, like, from them, where do they love, what they do about their business, personality wise, what do they bring, what do they want us to bring to that as well, and does that sit well in our kind of skill set and our wheelhouse for what we love doing. And so one of the ideas as part of this session was that, hey, like, you guys can run our business for us, right? You can take it on, we can give you some of the shares and things. And quite quickly it was a kind of, well, that is an option. We hadn't thought of that going in. Let's look at it, but let's look at all the options. And so part of doing that was like, hey, one option is sell the business. One option is close the business. One option is carry on running the business with different people that you brought in. And so we came up with all these options, and then we're able to talk through the kind of pros and cons of different ones. The one of the key things that was part of that session was, hey, it would be great to see your numbers. I think an obvious question that most accountants would ask. And the challenge was their existing advisors had done their year-end accounts completely separate from their bookkeeping software. And so their bookkeeping software told no picture of what the history said. And actually, we had to do a bit of work to kind of correct the history to get it right. Found out that they had all sorts of tax issues because they hadn't disclosed things properly. And so there was a big piece of work to kind of tidy up what had been neglected, essentially. And the ultimate outcome of the conversation was, hey, I think it's best we close this down. It's not working. And so we were able to help them with that. So that was a slightly unusual one because often you want to kind of go through a design process and then come up with, oh, yes, and now we're 20 times the size we were because we did this great thing. But sometimes it's the other way. And that just fits perfectly for those owners. And they're in a really happy place now that that's pretty much, they've done the UK side and now they're loving the sunshine in sunny Italy. The other one that I thought of was, I think this relates to marketing and accounting, is that people come to you sometimes and they think they know what they want. And to an extent they do. So in this scenario, they came because they were using an old desktop version of Sage. They wanted that on the cloud. So yeah, they came to us and they thought they wanted to move to Xero, and that they were using old desktop software, 2 companies, and they wanted to move that whole thing to the cloud. And so they approached us because they heard we were Xero experts. We could do that solution for them. We could deliver on that. And what we actually mapped out for them was wind it back from that task and think about, where do you want to be in 5 years' time? And part of the reason they wanted to move to Xero was because the people that were involved in the daily bookkeeping was actually the mum, who was one of the founders of the business. And she was going through some health challenges and getting older and looking to retire anyway. And so there was this kind of handing the baton on to the son, who's the business owner. And so that was part of the reason for the move. And so what I love doing with clients, and I love doing it with Shapes as well, actually, is getting you to think in the mode of like, tell this story from a year from now. What have we achieved? And so again, it's a bit of a design thinking kind of approach, is tell me the story from 5 years' time. What did you do to get to where you are? And use your imagination for that. And so they started talking about, in 5 years' time, we need to probably have a finance director in place. We probably need to have the mum not involved in the business so much. We probably want to be spending less time in the business ourselves because we're not doing as much manual paperwork. Great. Like, it's those solutions that people want. And so, yes, we can move you to Xero, but understanding exactly why, what the priorities are. That was a piece of, I love that workshop. Kind of, I think back to it quite a lot. And we then went ahead and did that work. So they're now using Xero. They've done some more tax planning, or they're about to do some more tax planning that's going to help them in the future. And we really have shifted from what was hey, we've done this for the last 10 years and this is how it works, and it's grown to a point but we're struggling, to okay, now we're platformed for the next phase of growth as well.
That's really great. I really like the idea of where would you like to see yourselves in 5 years' time, and then working back, what do we need to do to get there? Yeah,
I think there's another little it's like a trick, or it's a question you can ask as part of a process. So let's say you're at the point where you've decided what the solution is and what you're going to do next. So let's say that you've done the first exploration part and then the way forward is agreed. There's a really cool project or piece of work that you can do, usually with sticky notes, that asks the question from the perspective of the future, but everything's gone wrong. And so it's called a pre-mortem rather than a post-mortem. And so from that future perspective, it's all gone wrong. Why? Why has it gone wrong? What did we do, or what did we not do? Which are the reasons why it's failed? And the reason that's helpful is obviously then you can preempt some of the potential failings that everyone, and again, in a team setting, this is fantastic because everyone's got different views on risks and things that may happen. But yeah, that's a pre-mortem.
Oh, I love that. To return to some of our other questions, how do you manage to balance the analytical nature of accounting with the creative demands of marketing, and how does it all sort of fit together?
Yeah, cool. I think like take the traditional kind of persona of an accountant and a marketeer. Like the marketeers want to do extravagant things that cost loads of money, right? That's the assumption. And the assumption the other way is then the accountant says no because the budget's not there. I actually think there's a question from a marketing perspective of like, or from a business perspective, really, of have you even got a budget to start with? What are you happy to pay for? Maybe a campaign or maybe a website, or done well. What does that bring you in terms of added value to the business? So there is a question there for sure. And then from the accountant side, like in my view, not in a negative way, accountants should be creative and have to be creative because every business, like we said earlier, is unique. And so what can the accountant bring potentially from a tax planning perspective, potentially from a systems perspective, potentially from a business structure perspective, that gives clients options for how they run their business. And I think making sure they're involved in that decision-making process to the right level. They're not the director of the client's businesses, and we have that sometimes where clients go, "Oh, what are we doing next?" And you go, "Well, it's you, right? It's your decision. It's your business.
Yeah, it's your business.
We can help and we can advise, but it's not our call in a lot of cases." But yeah, what does the accountant bring creatively? And so that idea of not staying in your lane is something I see probably all too often from clients that we pick up from accountants that have maybe not met their service expectations. Like clients want more from their accountants often, I find. The ones that we're taking on at least, and it's because they kind of stick to their lane and they just do the year-end accounts or they just do the tax return. But the client doesn't. That's a grudge purchase in 99% of cases. No one's going out, waking up in the morning going, "Yeah, I really want to buy a tax return service today." No, that's a necessity that they have to do. So yeah, food for thought on that. One of the ways that we try to kind of combine marketing and accounting in that sense is we've come up with this concept of the Shapes team sheet, because we're both quite into our football, and we work with the Kent FA and got other involvements in football clubs and things. So we've come up with this idea of a team sheet, which essentially looks at what do great businesses or better organisations, better businesses have in place. And so, yeah, shout out to my team, Steve and Katie, for sort of coming up with this, and Candida for the design. But we've got 11 players on our team sheet, and we were then brainstorming like, what is it great businesses have in place, and that starts with things like a mission and values and strategy, and it has things like an exit plan or goals that they want to achieve and development, and there's 11 of them altogether. But what we use that for is to kind of put that in front of a business owner or a group of business owners and say, right, give your team or your business a grade on each of these areas, and is there commonality around the areas that you think could be leveled up? And that provides a really helpful tool for us to then go, right, okay, you haven't got financial forecasting, or you haven't got budgeting, or you haven't just got visibility on any of that stuff. We can help with some of those solutions, obviously. Might not all be for us to do. And they might go away and kind of think about some of those things in the background. But often that is kind of a case of it. There's some go-to-market, there's some marketing strategy side of that, there's some business strategy, there's some accounting and reporting strategy, and it all comes together sort of really nicely.
That's a really cool. I haven't heard of anyone using a team sheet like that before.
Yeah. We need to get it copyrighted probably, but yeah, it's on our website. You can find it on there.
And in terms of the tools that you use, the different digital tools that help you work in your firm, what tools would you recommend?
So we had the where were we now? 18, 19 months. We set up in May 2023. And part of the excitement with that was, hey, this is the start really of the AI revolution that we're now in the middle of. And so we very much wanted to be digital first as a business. It was probably a make or break question, really. So when Steve and I sort of sat down over coffee and we talked about this idea called Shapes, there was the kind of Microsoft Google question, and we both landed on the same side of we want to be a Google firm, so we're all set up on that. From the accounting side, there are some obvious tools that we use, Xero and Sift, and we're solely go down that route. Like, we don't have clients using other solutions, and that's not because they're not good solutions. It's because partly it's not our experience or knowledge. We would argue that they are the better solutions out there. That's why we've chosen them. But of course, like, if you've got knowledge in other areas, you can bring that to the party, which we didn't have. So we're exclusive on that, and one of our values is simplicity. So that's key to that. We also use like a marketing CRM system, HubSpot. Lots of people will have heard of, and we use Xero for our tax management and everything. And then we're in the middle of a bit of a change on our practice management side, which is exciting. I won't reveal on this podcast what that is, but you'll see that from us if you follow us on social. And then from the marketing side, I know things like the Adobe suite are huge, and then other tools. There's a couple of neat ones out there that we added to our stack last year. One is an AI sort of chat GPT style app. And the other one is an app lots of people have probably heard of or coming across called Scribe, which helps us document our processes. So if you want to learn how to do something or know how to do something and that needs to be repeated, that you can hit go, records your browser, does all the steps for you, and then that's a document that can be shared to help people scale.
Oh, fantastic. I wonder, since we're talking about sort of AI and technologies of the future, what do you see as the future of advising small businesses? Do you think that design thinking will become more of a common trend in this space, or what do you see as the future?
I'd only say I hope so. Like, it's not a fad. It's been around for years and years and years, design thinking. I think it's a question of what are you looking for in terms of what you want to provide as solutions for clients, and then secondly, what is it clients are looking for from you, and being attuned to that and being attentive to that. Our experience working with small businesses that are owner managed is people want help, and they want experts to come in and provide support for them. And so we talked very early on in the start of this combination of marketing and accounting that people they don't even want to buy a website a lot of the time. They don't want to buy a tax return, as I mentioned, but they want the output that gives them. And so whether that's more sales or whatever it is, or growth of the business in terms of numbers, but often it's really simple human things that people are after. And so we talk about the idea of, can we bring a little bit more freedom to someone who's a business owner who's running a business? Can we bring a little bit more relief because they understand that the tax and the accounts and the tricky bits that they can't deal with, even the social media side, is being looked after for them by people that know what they're doing? And can we bring a little bit more delight to people in the sense of, actually, like, we should be having fun when we're running businesses, right? Like, business shouldn't be boring. It should be like, it's what we do most of our waking time. So can that be fun as well? And so we, again, if you follow us on socials, you'll see us prattling around most of the time. And part of that is, by design, like, there is some background to showing personality that is attractive and generates followers. part of it is also we just like doing that stuff. It's fun, and business should be fun as well as used to pay mortgages and things. So I hope it comes together more. Whether it will, of course, there is a playoff, I think, between the what people are prepared to pay and the time it takes to do something with design thinking. It takes time, and that costs money generally. Even though we're trying to get away from timesheets and all of that boring stuff, there is a connection between the time that something takes and the amount of money that needs to be charged for it. It's just the way things are. And so I think for us, we want to go down that route. We love providing services that genuinely make people feel like we've helped them, and we charge a little bit more than if we just kind of spat it out and did the job. For other people, other business owners, that's not the model for them, and so that's fine. That's okay. Like, that works for them. But understand what you're getting into, I think, is the sense, and maybe that comes with this question of the shift from compliance to advisory. Isn't it? Like, for me, good accounting practice, even 15, 20 years ago, when I was in a very traditional firm, is ones where you thought about the solutions, you thought about the where the clients were aiming to get to, and you came alongside and supported that. So I don't think it's a new shift. I think it's accounting as it should be done well, properly understanding what the client is trying to get out of their business.
And I really like the attitude of how can we bring delight to a business. I don't think it's a thing that often you hear, or that often people would associate with like the traditional idea of accounting and what accountants' roles might look like.
Yeah, I'd add to that very briefly on the whole experience of going to an accountant's office and sitting across a meeting room table with someone in a suit, where if that's not your comfort zone, you're going to feel really awkward doing that.
Yes.
And so even if you've got a nice biscuit and a cup of coffee, that's going to be an awkward thing for you to do, particularly if that's not your day to day. And so for us, we wanted an office space that's kind of different from that. We've got a lounge next door rather than a meeting room. And when people come, we have fun. We have one person turned up and went, "Oh, it's like Google in here," because we've got our putting mat outside, but people come and they play, and it's just I think if accountants can take design thinking or that kind of idea forward, like, how can you make your client feel as comfortable as possible? Because the conversations that we have on a sofa seem to be way more open and way less rigid than, I guess, a traditional accountant client relationship.
Oh, that's great. Take some of that extra pressure off.
100%.
Cool. Then I think, as we are running out of time, I'm going to throw some quick rapid fire questions at you.
Awesome.
So what's one piece of software, I have to say, besides Swift, that you can't live without?
Yeah, cool. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but not by name. It's an app called Claude. Claude AI, which is by a business called Anthropic that are based in the Silicon Valley. They've developed it's like a ChatGPT tool. What we love about it is it seems to be way more human than ChatGPT, from our initial experience of it. And shout out to Karen Rayburn from the Profitable Firm, and to Jason Statz. I think we're talking about this last year, so we sort of piggybacked off of that. But we've used it in our team for all sorts of things, and it's also really helpful for like recipes and stuff at home too.
Great. What's the best book you've read recently?
Best book I have read, I'm not gonna say recently, but in the last 2 years, that 6 Types of Working Genius by Pat Lencioni is fantastic. It's almost something that we've used is foundational for us as a business. So understanding not necessarily where your skill set is, but where you come alive and where you do your best work, and then trying to figure out how you can spend most of your working day in those spaces. Check that out. If you want another recommendation, because you mentioned one, but I'll say 2. Pat Lencioni's The Ideal Team Player is also another top recommendation from me.
Great. What's the most valuable lesson you've learned about building a business?
Most valuable lesson, I think, just be happy making mistakes. Like we've decided things and then realized quite quickly, that wasn't the right decision. We shouldn't have done that. Let's do something different. And I think, you can get too attached to stuff for fear of being wrong. But be comfortable changing your mind and being flexible.
Right. Iterate and reiterate.
Yeah.
And then lastly, if there's only one thing that someone was to take away from today's podcast, what would you want them to take away?
I think I'd go back to the idea of not necessarily staying in your lane as an accountant. I think we need to connect with our clients on a personal level, human to human, before we kind of put these barriers up of I'm delivering this service and you're receiving this service and paying for this service. People are happy to pay and they love relationships. I love relationships. Why wouldn't I be happy to pay for someone that is going to help me out and do a great job? And if we can bring some delight alongside that, then I'm even more willing to pay.
Absolutely. Oh, thanks so much. This has been a really interesting and insightful episode. Thank you. And thanks everyone for watching our first episode of season 2. Because you stayed till the end, here's a bonus question. What do you think the future of advisory looks like?
Cool question. I think one of the things I think that small business owners are looking for is, as businesses grow and develop and you're starting to measure different things and different things become important, then what they need is one place to go and look at all that information. And so from an accounting perspective, take SIFT as an example, you can bring all that accounting information together, perhaps with a budget and a forecast and some different metrics around customers, and they love that all in one place. But also this idea of bringing together non-financial metrics into that same solution, I think is what most people want from their business. They are fed up with going to lots of different places for lots of different bits of information to help them make decisions. And so the more that we as advisors and solutions architects in some ways as well can help them with tools that bring all that information together, the better. And so like an example of that would be the connections tool with SIFT. Let's bring our information on pipeline and potential customers and whatever else it is into the one place. And I think when you talk about scorecards, which is really relevant for like having an overall view of where your business is at, the idea of a scorecard with different financial metrics and non-financial metrics in the same place is really, when you start talking to people, what most people want to have.
That makes sense, because then you can really see how the actual operations of your business come into play and what outcomes that leads to.
And it feeds into, I guess, what success is. Success isn't always about financial metrics. It's definitely about pipeline. It's definitely about how do your customers feel about you. It's definitely about how do your employees feel about you. And so if you can bring those different metrics together alongside the financials, it's going to make that decision-making process so much better.
Thanks for tuning in to the Beyond Insights podcast.
Please like and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to right now.
And please share with any of your colleagues or friends or family members that you think might benefit from listening to this podcast.
That's all from us. Until next time, see you then.